Hello, everybody, and welcome to the History Center, the virtual History Center. Um, we're excited tonight. I'm excited to be talking with Annette Joseph about her new book. I am Betsy Riley, and I am the editor-in-chief of Atlanta Magazine and also editorial director for Atlanta Magazine's Home, which is how Annette and I first got to know each other more than 10 years ago. She was doing some styling for us, and then she became our entertaining editor. And so we've now been colleagues and friends for many years. I was fortunate enough to visit her in 2013 in Alassio, so that was fun. I've seen one of her places. But tonight we're talking about her latest book, Italy is My Boyfriend. And if you'd like to buy a copy, the official bookseller is Acapella Books. And there should be a link on your screen, let's see, the right of your screen near where the Q&As is, or you can find it on the History Center website. And as we talk, if you want to submit questions through the Q&A, go right ahead and we will answer some of those after we've talked for a little while. But first, let me introduce Annette. She is based in Atlanta, but spends about half her time in Italy. She is an expert in entertaining, styling, and cooking. She has 2 previous books, Picture Perfect Parties and Cocktail Italiano. This is her 3rd book. She regularly contributes to NBC's Today and Martha Stewart Living Radio. She's also published recipes and party ideas, Better Homes and Gardens, Epicurious, Huffington Post, Southern Living, and of course, Atlanta Magazine's Home. So welcome, Annette.
Hey there.
So Annette, I first just thought I would ask you, about La Fortezza and tell everybody, I mean, not everybody may know what it is you're doing now. So let's just sort of start with what you're doing now and today.
Sure. Well, I was a stylist for a long time. And I sort of evolved into teaching styling. I mentored many, many people over the years, and I really love to teach people. So I thought it would be a cool idea to do these workshops. And I write all about them in Italian, in the Italy is My Boyfriend. I tell you all about how it all evolved. But essentially, La Fortezza is a medieval fortress that we bought about 4 years ago. And we renovated it completely, and we hold creative retreats there. And we do workshops with famous photographers, we teach styling, we do cooking classes. And then most recently, we've been doing a lot of slow food experiences because I love food, so I've gotten to know a lot of the local artisans, and so we visit all these people that live around us that are our neighbors and our friends now, and also our purveyors of anything from milk to, bread to, in fact, I'm writing a La Fortezza cookbook right now. I'm in the process of doing that because where we live in the Lunigiana, which is the northwestern corner of Tuscany, it's such an unusual place, and the food there is so unique that I decided I wanted to share all of the wonderful, delicious dishes from there. So it's really a creative place for people to sort of come and relax and create and enjoy the Italian countryside. So it's pretty fabulous. I will say,
it sounds pretty awesome.
Peaceful there, yes, it's very peaceful.
Although I suppose it wasn't very peaceful when you were last there. You had to kind of like leave Italy rather promptly.
Yeah, it was pretty dramatic, actually.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to talk about that too much, but I can't resist.
Well, I'll just quickly tell you what happened is we got there at the end of February. I was supposed to start shooting this cookbook. And so we had, assembled our team, and we were going to, shoot there. And, we didn't really understand what was going on until we sort of got there. And then it was at the very beginning of it sort of exploding. And so, which was it was such an interesting thing. I know that sounds crazy to say, but I've never really experienced anything like that. So it was really interesting, and you kind of have to make these decisions like, are we going to leave? Are we going to stay? What are we going to do? And so our son actually, my husband left like early because he was concerned that he was going to have to quarantine. He's a doctor. So he was worried that his office was going to make him quarantine, which they did, of course. And so I knew I was going to have to come back and quarantine as well, which was fine. And everybody ended up quarantining anyway. So I made a decision to leave because my son called me and he said, Mom, they're going to close the country and you're going to have a hard time leaving. So figure this out. He's a very smart kid. I'm glad we raised such a smart boy. And he really wanted me to leave. So I did. So I changed all my plans. I literally got a flight out of Pisa because we're close to Pisa. And I had a mask, I had, my husband had brought masks. I don't even know why, but he's always prepared for everything. So he gave me a mask. So I had a mask and I actually wore the mask the entire time because it made me feel a little calmer and safer. It's funny in retrospect, now everybody should be wearing masks. But I got on this bus with this man who had almost like a hazmat suit on and a mask and goggles. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Because we really didn't know what was going on. So I flew home, very empty plane, which was nice. Nobody was sitting around me. And I got home and then I had to quarantine. Then everybody had to quarantine and they literally shut the whole thing down in Italy the next day. So I left like on, the 8th and they shut everything down on the 9th, so
Oh my gosh.
I know. So it was one of those things where I was really thrilled that my son sort of, strong-armed me to get the heck out. But having said that, I will say they've done an incredible job there. And they really locked everybody down and everybody was very cooperative. And I think because Italy has been through things before, everybody sort of came together and we had very little infection in our area because we're in a very remote area. Mm-hmm. And then we have no infection there now because I, of course, talk to everybody. We have a bunch of people that work for us at La Fortessa. And so they text me all the time. And so they're doing very well, thank goodness. And, nobody we know there was ill. And like I said, we were in a very remote area. So, so it was real interesting. It was an interesting life experience. I'm all about it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Annette, I think just this fantasy of having this place like this is just so amazing. And I think we all love living vicariously through your story, and I think this all sort of started because your family, when your kids were growing up, you would take them to the beach, you take them to the Riviera, Italy. I just think, gosh, we took our kids like to Myrtle Beach,
Well, but the difference here is understand that my husband and I are both children of immigrants.
That's what I was going to ask you. You have European backgrounds, right?
Right. So for us, going to Europe in the summer was normal. Mm-hmm. He went to visit his grandparents. I went to visit my grandparents. We would spend the entire summer in Europe. So for us, it wasn't, it's great that I married somebody that had the same background because he really got it. And so for us, it was very sort of comforting. It was like our childhood and kind of sharing that with our kids. And we did go visit our relatives in Hungary and in Germany as well when we were there. So it was very much like our summers were when we were kids. We wanted to share that with our children. Yeah.
So you started first just renting houses, before you bought. How difficult is that to do? Like, that might be a little bit of a fantasy. I can see, I might be able to try sometime.
Actually, now it's much easier. When we were going 25 years ago, it was much more difficult. And there were companies that specialized in renting villas, which there still are. Yeah. And there were very few. So it was actually, pretty easy to go, well, we're going with this company and we're going to, and it was sort of a crapshoot. I'm kind of my personality is the personality of a person that sort of just jumps in and, I'm a go for it kind of person. And if things don't work out, it's a funny story. And that's sort of my personality anyway. So you have to sort of be daring in that way. But now there's so many Airbnbs, there's, you can really experience Europe. And, people look at me and they want my life. They're like, I want to do what you're doing. But what I say to people is, yes, I encourage you to do this. But we spent 10 years renting places for the summer. So it wasn't like I just said, I'm buying a house in Italy and I'm moving there. I really knew what I was getting into after 10 years.
Yeah.
And then we bought a place, you know,
Yeah.
so we really understood the region, and we moved to Liguria because that's where we vacationed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so I encourage people to do it. Definitely do it. And I actually prefer it. I mean, I like, you know, fancy hotels. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I do like staying at an apartment or a flat or a house, going grocery shopping, going to the same place for coffee every day. So, but yeah, you have to put your time in. But I highly suggest that people do that in whatever country they think they might want to live in.
Yeah. Well, it did seem that the whole process, you know, takes a lot of patience. Like, you know, like you said, you did it for 10 years, you rented places. And, you know, when you would discuss the process of house shopping, and you'd have to wait an entire year for, you know, a place that you might be interested in to, I don't know, to go see it, to make an appointment. You know, we're so used to, like, you go on Zillow and you can be there tomorrow. And
oh, absolutely. I mean, you can buy a house today and move in, you know, in 2 days. I mean, no problem. I think that, you know, Italy is a place where patience is definitely needed. I always say Italy taught me patience. This renovation really taught me patience more than anything of La Fortezza. But yeah, it's just a very different way of viewing life. You know, it's a process. And I'm also a process person. So I like the process I like the anticipation. Even though I work in a business, like when I styled, I mean, I could like refurnish a house in a day, you know, right? Just like take everything out, put everything all back, and, you know, we take pictures of it. But for me as a person, not as a stylist, I like process. I do. And I think, you know, to live in a foreign country, it's not America, and it's very different. And you always have to have that in the back of your mind. When you're there, you have to remind yourself, oh, this is not America. That's right. And there's a lot of instances of that in the book, a lot of examples that I give in the book about that particular mindset.
How did you, you know, this book is very different from your previous books. Your previous books, you know, they're entertaining and recipes, and this is a memoir. Did you know all along? I mean, did you like keep a diary? How did you remember all this?
Well, it's so funny because so many people ask me that question. And to be honest with you, I didn't really keep a diary. I did start writing things down a few years ago. And I've written, you know, Cocktail Italiano was sort of the entry to this. It was sort of the pathway to get to this because it is sort of a love letter to the Riviera where I lived. And it does write a lot about the ins and outs of living on the Riviera. It's not just a cocktail book. It's sort of a little travelogue book too. But, you know, it's funny when everything ended, you know, when I finished the whole process of doing La Fortezza, I was like, you know, this is a book. I mean, this is not only is it a memoir, but it's sort of an educational book about, you know, like sort of this was my process. And if you can learn anything, you know, if there are like little, you know, glimmers of education in there, you know, then grab them and, you know, go for it. So I really, as I was going through, I was like, these are funny stories. This is a book. And I mean, my girlfriend Monica is hilarious. And everything I wrote in the book is true. There's like nothing that I made up or embellished. In fact, I probably held back on a lot of things. But it really just sort of, when we were finished with the renovation, I thought this is a book.
Yeah. I mean, all the funny stories about the houses that you didn't buy. I mean, you know, the one where the sister owned the bottom floor and then the other sister owned the top floor.
Yeah.
Like all these crazy things. Like,
oh yeah.
What do you think? What was the craziest house that got away? That, you know, that you didn't.
Oh, the crazy. Well, I mean, the house that I think I loved the most and would have worked at the time for me was probably the Castle House. I really liked that house a lot. It just, you know, but I'm such an energy person, so it just had this really great energy to it. I, I really have to say that in Italy, when you're house hunting, you always have to keep in mind that there's going to be something that's like a glitch. Nothing's ever perfect. Like here, when you look at houses, they're pretty perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But there, when you look at houses that they're pretty perfect, then you know that there's something that's just going to come your way that's going to just put, the kibosh on it, or, you just know. And that's the way it, and you have to decide, well, can I live with this? Can I live with this? Because there's one down thing with every single property that you look at always. And so you're really weighing the cons more than the pros. So I don't think there was just like one house where I said, oh God, I wish I could have this house. I mean, in the end, I feel like I got the house I was supposed to have because, in Italy, they say the house finds you.
Mm-hmm.
So the house found me, but I didn't realize that it had found me yet. It was like a guy at a bar that you meet that's really nice, but he's almost too nice. So you're like, I don't know. And then you meet him again at a party 4 years later, and you're like, this is a really nice guy, and you end up marrying him. It's that story, And that's what I equated a lot of. It's why the book is called Italy is My Boyfriend, because it's sort of what I equated. Even house hunting was a love affair, not just the love affair with the country, but, the whole process was like dating. It was like going to a bar and going, well, I like this guy, but I don't love his shoes, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So the first place where I visited you was in Liguria, and, that was sort of natural because you guys had always spent a lot of time at the beach when you went over there. So talk a little bit about that, about Lazio and that area and what you loved about that place.
Well, I wanted to ask you something. Aren't you glad
Yes.
you didn't appear in the worst guest category in the book when you were reading?
I have to say, so I read Annette's book like an early galley, to write the blurb. And I was holding my breath because I thought, oh, if she says anything about me as a bad guest, I'm not going to be able to write the blurb. I didn't see, she either hit it really, really well or, didn't write about me. So I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, what I say is this. I would say that 99% of the people that visited me were fabulous and super fun, and we had a great time. We had a really lovely time. I mean, there was no drama. I mean, we went to dinner, went shopping, we did all the stuff. And but it would be boring if I wrote about all my nice guests. So I had a handful of guests that were, a handful, and it makes for great conversation. And I did change the names to protect the innocent. So, but as I say in the book, you know who you are.
One of my favorite stories that I tell from our trip, and it illustrates what you say about the Italians, is like, Annette took us to this lovely winery that she had been to like 2 weeks before with other friends from Atlanta, in fact. And she called ahead and said, we're coming. They're like, yes, I know. You're there. We're open. And so we were like 30 minutes late. But we got, we called. They said, fine, no problem. So we get to the door, and Annette rings the door, and this woman answers, and she goes, well, no, this is not, whatever the winery was. And Annette goes, are you what? And she goes, yeah, it's down there. And, she points like, I don't know, 6 doors down, and it was like townhouses, like they were all attached. So Annette's kind of like, okay. So we go 6 doors down. We knock on the door. The woman opens and goes, well, welcome to the winery. It was the same woman. Like, what did she just like run like a cartoon? She just ran down the
It was so funny because there was a plaque on the door and it says the winery, and I knew that that was like their offices, and I mean, so yes, it was so, but to me it was so absolutely fabulous. It was so, we laughed so hard.
Oh,
like
so funny.
Because she opens it and she's like, oh no, this isn't where it is, and closes the door and literally ran, because I mean it was up the street of the village.
I think we drove like a little bit. I mean, like, she just ran.
And then she's like, welcome to the winery. Come in.
Yeah, like she had never seen you before. It was so funny.
It was. That is very, Italian. Like, for example, I went to go get my residency card, and you're only allowed to pick up your residency card on Saturdays. But I knew I was leaving, so you have to go to the police station. And it was right before I was like rushing out of there the last time I was there, right? And so it's the same story. I go and I sit in the questura. I sit there on the bench, and the lady's very nice, a police woman. And then she calls this guy out from the office, the residency office, and he comes out, and I say to him in Italian, I'm leaving on Saturday. I know that my residency card is here. Could you possibly go get it for me? Oh, of course. So I give him my old card. So he's out my information, and he goes in the back, and he comes back to me, and he says, it's there. And I said, well, can I have it? He said, no, you have to come back on Saturday. But I had explained everything to him and the signora that was standing there, and they would not give me the card until I came back on, so explained to him that I had to leave, and, COVID, and nothing. It was like, it's there. I said, okay, thank you. Grazie.
Yeah.
Buongiorno.
Yeah, I mean, just the stuff. I'm sure that it's not like there aren't things about Americans that I'm sure they roll their eyes a million.
There are similar things in America, but I will say America, if you are very into efficiency and the air conditioning working and going to the post office and just taking care of your business and going to the bank and taking care of your business, they don't do that there. And online stuff, you have to go in person. Like the person at the bank couldn't even get me online. I mean, I have a million of these stories.
Yeah.
He says, let me just give you the cash. I'm like, okay. It's like, that's not what I wanted, but okay.
I also love, how hard it was to find out certain bits of information, even from people that you're very close to. Like when you were trying to figure out which beach, you wanted to sort of invest yourself in, and, you tried different ones, and you guys found one that you loved. And then like 2-3 years into it, you hear about this other lovely beach, and you mention it to Leo, he's like your BFF. I mean, I met Leo, sweetest guy, awesome, just really a wonderful person. But yet, when you mention it, he's like, oh yeah, that's one of my favorites. And like, it never occurred to him to say.
Right, but I think that, in America, we are very much information people.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're really withholding information. It's just that they don't really think that way.
No.
Like we're like, oh, Betsy, have you been to this restaurant?
Yeah.
Like it's almost kind of show-offy in America. You're like, oh, we went to this fabulous restaurant. Have you been yet? They don't even, they just take you to the most fabulous restaurant you've ever been to in your life. And you just kind of sit there and go, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So it's a very different way of looking at sort of how you live your life, how you hang out. It's not a priority. Yeah. So it's not about necessarily being withholding. It's just culturally different. Yeah. And those are the things I try to explain to my friends that say, I want to buy a house there. I always, I'm like, maybe you should just like open a bank account and, live here for 3 months and see if you like it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have friends that it wouldn't be for them. They've told me that. They're like, I could not live like this. I need, my central air cranked down to 32, degrees below zero. And,
well, your La Forteza, what made you know that was the right place? I mean, you've been on such an odyssey of different places, and it wasn't, I mean, you had thought you'd be at the ocean still, and this is a whole different area.
Yeah, we had looked at this area early on, and this property is pretty magical, and I knew when I walked through it, it was magical. But it was such a daunting project that I think my headspace just wasn't there. But La Forteza knew that it wanted me. So I kept drifting back to it. Every time I'd look at a bunch of things and I would drift back to it. And finally, one visit, I just sort of, when I got in the car, we were driving away and I thought, I think this is the one. I was in the car with my friend, and I kind of looked at him and I said, I think this might be it. And then Frank was also very into getting a place that was big enough, because in Italy, it's very hard to expand your space. They don't really limit you. It's like 30% of your footprint or whatever that you can renovate, which isn't a lot actually. And so it was a little bit daunting, but he was very, he's very, very supportive and very trusting. And also is a big, he's like my cheerleader. So he's like, you can do this. You've done big projects. You're ready for this. And once he said that, I was kind of relieved. I thought, okay, I think I can do this step by step. So really what was standing in my way was more the idea that it was a big, 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 big project. And, I do like to bite off more than I can chew, but this was really a big project. It's 27 acres, it's a big, it's over 10,000 square feet. We have 8 guest rooms and 8 bathrooms and a studio space and a commercial kitchen and a main house. And, it was a lot. And so it was a very, very daunting project.
And a vineyard.
Yeah.
Which, that wine is lovely, by the way. Thank you. Annette Frank shared a bottle with us. It was awesome.
It's good. It's good wine. We're really happy with it. We drink it a lot. We order about 1,000 bottles a year.
So do you bring back much of it to the U.S.?
Not a ton of it, but we give it as gifts. It's pretty gifts to people. So we do a lot of handing of bottles as people are leaving. And, now people come and they just grab bottles. It's really funny. Like our workshop guests, they just, they're saying goodbye with like 4 bottles underneath.
And why are they clinking?
And they're like, thank you so much for the wine. So we love sharing it. And it's everything I imagined, I will say, which I feel really fortunate to say. It really is a place where everybody enjoys themselves. They relax. They love the view. We laugh a lot. We drink. We dance. We cook a lot. The people that are around me are lovely. I have lovely friends there. So I feel like after all of this, 25 years of building my life there, I feel like it is what I imagined. And part of the reason I wanted to write the book, of course, because I wanted to share the journey. And then I also wanted to share the happy bits as well, because it is a journey.
Yeah. So your kitchen, the kitchen in Lazio was very, European, the way they buy it, the modular thing, which you talk about how in Europe people take their kitchens with them. Like in the US where you have everything is built in, and in Europe it's more modular and then you can take it from house to house. But you left that kitchen behind when you sold.
Well, the woman that bought it bought everything. She bought it fully furnished. I think she wanted to buy my clothes too. The weird thing is at the closing, we showed up in the same dress. How weird is that?
No, I wanted to buy it all, so I don't blame her.
Yeah, just said, I'll take it. And I was like, we'll wrap it up. There are a few things that I wanted to take from my kitchen, obviously, because I'm a chefy person. So there were, I wasn't going to give her my nod.
Yeah. So why don't you tell me about your kitchen at La Fortezza, or do you have 2 kitchens?
We have 2 kitchens. Well, we actually have 2.5 kitchens, because in the guest quarters, so we live in a tower. And so at the very bottom of the tower is the cantina, which we haven't renovated, which is an incredible project. And I talked to one of my friends here, Hillary. I talked to Hillary because Hillary was there. And I said, maybe her and Bill Peace could do something in that cantina for us, because it's a very medieval space. It's got a vaulted ceiling. It's where they stored all the prosciutto and all the the parmigiano and all the wine, and it's just an amazing, and it's huge. So that's at the very bottom. And then the next floor we have the guest rooms, and we have and it's very tall, and very tall ceilings. And then on that floor, we have the studio, and we have the commercial kitchen and the student lounge. And then the next 2 floors above it is our house, what we call the main house. And then we have an outbuilding, which has 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. So the guest quarters is below the main house, and they have a half kitchen there that they can have snacks and breakfast and whatever. We have it fully stocked for everybody. And then the people that are in the outbuilding can also come in and enjoy this. It's a really cute kitchen. It's featured in Elle Decor. There's some parts of it that are not there. If you go to the press page of La Fortessa Workshops, just Google my name and it says La Fortessa Work. Click on that and then go to the press page, because Casa Facile, which is like the Italian version of Elle Decor, I guess. Well, although they have an Elle Decor, but it's kind of like Atlanta Magazine's home or whatever. They did a beautiful feature and you could see everything. And then we have a kitchen in our main house that I use to, basically, we're running workshops. I use it to make espresso essentially. And that's it. Cause then usually I'm in the commercial kitchen. And we have a chef. His name is Philip Meeker. He's from Atlanta. He speaks Italian fluently. He was trained in Paris, and he's a private chef here. And so he and I are very, very good friends. Now we are. But I hired him to come chef for us. And we weirdly have the same sort of palate and food aesthetic, which is great. And we have a huge, huge kitchen and a huge, huge garden. And so we go in the garden. We have a fruit orchard. We grow artichokes, we have eggplant and peppers, and I mean, you name it, we grow it. We have a huge herb garden, strawberries, all that. So he goes out there and he figures out like what he wants to do. And that's why I'm doing this cookbook, because we have so much fun with the food there. And then the eggs come, like from the chickens next door, and the olive oil comes from the next door neighbor.
Wow.
And then all the flour comes from the mill, and all the dairy comes from our dairy, which is 10 minutes down the road. So we have like all fresh cheese. We have an amazing butcher, fresh fish, because we're near Liguria. So we cook like crazy, and then we do cooking lessons and we teach people how to make pasta, and it's super, super fun. I mean, we have such a good time, and it's such a distinctive area for food. So I've taken Philip to all these really cool places where they make all this sort of slow food, because it's recognized by UNESCO. So they have all this medieval cooking with fire and all this stuff. We love fire. And then we have a pizza oven, which is a wood burning pizza oven that it took me a year to learn how to stoke this thing, but I'm really good at it now. And we make pizza and we make all sorts of things in this outdoor oven. So we cook outside too. But we cook all over the place, and we're all about it. And it's a beautiful kitchen. It's very rustic. We have, my favorite thing is my La Conche, which I say it's a range, and I love it more than my husband. I shouldn't say that too loudly, but
that's your next book. La Conche is my husband.
Exactly. So we're very fortunate because we do have lovely guests, and they cook with us.
Nice. Well, so don't forget to send questions. We have one question, which I think this must be from somebody because they want to know if you were still in touch with Jaja Monica.
Oh, yes. Monica and I are still really, really good friends. Oh, absolutely. In fact, she ordered a bunch of books for her stores. She's very excited.
Nice.
And I was interviewed by the Florentine, which was super fun because this is very late for them. So they would chime in and you'd see them, because on the Florentine, they were like loading me up, ciao, Annette, hi, Annette, I love you, Annette, da, da, da. But yes, I see Monica. I am only 2.5 hours away from where I lived before. So last year I went to do a talk in Turin, a food talk. And so I stopped on my way there. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah. How's Vivi?
Vivi is good.
Yeah.
She really loves it there. So Vivi's my dachshund. She's a mini dachshund who we bought in Bergamo, and she's doing great. I mean, she's feisty and Italian, and she loves it there. She's really actually fearless there, and we kind of don't see her all day.
Yeah.
And we got a cat when we're there too.
Okay.
Freckles.
Now, someone wants to know, when are you planning to go back?
I am going back August 11th. Because I'm a resident, I can go back now if I want to. But I'm going to go back in August because we're going to shoot the summer my photographer is British, so that is very lucky that that's who I selected. He's Jamie Oliver's photographer, David Loftus. He's phenomenal. So he is actually going to meet me there, and we're going to shoot the summer chapter, and then I'll come back in October, and we'll shoot the fall chapter, and I'll come back October 30th so that I can do my absentee ballot or go vote. But I'm going to be back to vote. I will be back in this country to vote.
Good. Okay, so someone asked, can you share your favorite anecdote from the book?
Oh gosh, there's so many great.
There are a lot of great ones. I was trying not to give too many of them away.
Well, there's one that's really fun that involves one of my girlfriends from here, Sharon, who's a hoot in herself. I mean, she's a hoot. And then Monica's a hoot. And we went out to dinner, and Monica is just, she's like me on steroids. So she's always up for some sort of crazy idea. So she said, let's go look at this castle. I think we should buy it. And I think we should do weddings there. And my girlfriend, Sharon, is a events planner. And she's pretty crazy. She's like funny crazy. And Monica's crazy. So the two of them are like, yeah, let's do it. And without giving too much away, we go on this raucous, crazy adventure that like many times in the book, I thought I was going to die, driving up these hills and into the hinterland, into the countryside. So I thought I was going to die. I didn't, but I was close.
Yeah, I remember you took us to a restaurant that was way up. And
Lavinia in Alaska.
Yeah, and it was like, I mean, the streets were so narrow. If you put your hand on either side, you would have touched a.
Yeah, you have to really know how to drive there. I learned how to drive in Europe. And so I'm very good with the stick shift. I've always driven, stick shift cars. But you do have to be very defensive. So when you're going up, and I love taking people up there because they would always freak out because it almost gets like narrower and narrower and narrower as you get up there. And you're like, oh, how are we going to do this? And then there's always a car whipping out of the parking lot coming down at 90 miles an hour. So you have to sort of flip around and back into a space and let them go and then carry on. But you're at, this 90-degree angle trying to, shift and not slide down the hill. It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, I've had, a lot of it. And now where we live on the edge of these olive groves, and there's acres and acres, like hundreds of acres of olive groves. And it's a very narrow, slippy road. And I drive a big Range Rover there, like a big, really old tank. I mean, it's not a fancy car at all. It's like my beater car. And these little tiny roads, and then there's cows that show up and sheep that show up. And, it's just, it's crazy. You have to really pay attention when you're driving there.
Didn't you have I remember you had GPS, but it was like an American GPS and couldn't pronounce any of the Italian names.
Yeah, that's always fun. Yeah, and it's still like that. I mean, I drive very old cars there, so I don't have it's not a fancy car at all. When I used to rent cars, they were much fancier, but now I have an old Cinquecento and an old Range Rover, and I love them to death, but my phone is my GPS. And if I don't have a signal, I mean, there are funny stories of people getting to us at La Forteza. Like no one can find us because even when you drop a pin, people can't find us. And it's not their fault. It's really the GPS just drops off and they can't, so I get these phone calls saying, so are you near a church? And I'm like, well, it's Italy, there's a lot of churches. So sure, I'm near a church. Where are you? Read me a sign, or do you have a red rusty gate? I'm like, no, I don't. And then they're like, not to be sexist, but women always find their way. It's very interesting. And I think partly because they're so obsessed with that they're going to get lost. Like Heidi Rue, who's never driven in Italy in her life, drove from Pisa alone by herself up to our house, like no problem. It was amazing. But I think she was so afraid and so scared that she was like, I am going to listen to every bloody thing this thing tells me to do. And I am not going to veer off this, So she was, and she, we send very explicit directions to read before you start your GPS, because we had our intern last year was a genius from Wellesley, Adri, and it took her a month to like put this together. It was so complicated. And the guys, they just don't read it. They go, oh, I can find it. I know where it is. I looked on the map. Okay. So, and then there's the competition, like at dinner, they're like, well, how many people have found their way here the first time? And the sadist in me loves telling men, oh, well, the girls always find it. And then I sit back with my glass of wine and just wait for a response.
One of my favorite stories in the book was, trying to find when you got Vivi and the crazy directions you went through, and like, you found that you passed the hookers by the road and you knew you were getting close.
The second time. The first time we didn't know there were hookers on the road.
Yeah.
The second time we knew. Well, it's one of my favorite, my favorite movie of all time, Italian movie, because no one has asked this question, so I will tell you, is Stealing Beauty. I love that movie. And it really is one of those movies that, everybody thinks it's Under the Tuscan Sun, which I loved, but Stealing Beauty was really the movie where I looked at and I said, okay, I could live in Tuscany because they're artists and they live in this funky house and it's great. So at the end of the movie, not to spoil the movie, but it is very cute, Liv Tyler, who is the star of the movie, she's very, very young. She says to her boyfriend, why do you want to come to America? It's so beautiful here. And they're walking and there's a road and there's like 3 hookers and a motorcycle. And that is it was just so perfect, because there are parts of Italy, the parts of Italy I love are sort of the ugly parts, and the sort of seedier parts or the uglier bits. I kind of embrace that because everybody always thinks Italy. So, so for me, being the artist that I am and the person that I am, I love the industrial areas that are really great that, nobody knows about, that I go and, buy some obscure thing, or the markets are always in gross, disgusting places, so I love that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Let's see. Did anybody have any other questions? We've got like 2 or 3 minutes.
2-3 minutes, no questions. This is just a listening crowd, I guess.
So I'm going to ask you this, and I'll ask another question.
Hey, listen, this is so nice to see you. I feel like I haven't
seen
you forever, or any of my friends, and you look great.
I know. Well, I had to work on the light because I read your book, and I'm like, okay, I've got to be somewhere. But my light is fading now. So
the light's tough, the light's tough. This whole Zoom thing is tough.
Yeah. So you mentioned you like going to the markets. What's your favorite market to go to?
I think the market everybody should go to is the Forte dei Marmi market. And it is on the coastline. It's on the Tuscan Riviera. So it's not the Italian, but it's very close to where we live. It's 45 minutes. And it's on the coastline. It has the most fabulous beach clubs. That's where I go to the beach now, since we actually live close to the beach, closer than you think. Just so everybody knows where we are between Carrara, where they make the marble, and Parma, where they make the cheese, so that we live right in that area. And it's really a great place to live because you're in the countryside, you have a beautiful view, and then, you can drive to Forte dei Marmi to the market on a Sunday. It takes you 45 minutes. And and I have all these little tricks, which I'm not going to share, but when we'll
take your workshop.
When you come, yeah.
When you do the workshop.
Right, okay, right. But it's a beautiful market. It's super fun. It's in a beautiful place. You definitely want to stay there and have lunch. And I do write about it in the book. I have an issue there with one of my guests. So.
So we have one last question. It's just, do you spend time at La Fortezza with your family? Not just during your workshops?
I do. I mean, the way that we've gotten it sort of put together is that our kids can actually have separate spaces. We have grown children. So Levi comes about once a year. He feels super comfortable there. He stays for a few weeks. Last year he came for, I think, 2 weeks a week. The year before he came last year he came with 3 friends. It was amazing. We had so much fun. But yeah, they do come. I mean, they feel really comfortable, obviously, in Italy because they grew up there. So they're very chill there, and you know they hang out at the house, and Levi rides his bicycle, and they love to cook. And last year I took them, he and his friends, to this Sagra, which is a festival, which I write about in the La Fortessa cookbook. All these festivals, these food festivals are amazing. So there's one like right above us in this little village, and our gardener lives there, and he like runs it, and like our electrician lives up there. So all these people that I've worked with live up. It's very fun, and it's very folksy. So they have this like band, and everybody dances. All the old people are out dancing, and they have dances they do. So these four boys went out there, and they were hilarious. It was the best time on that dance floor, and they were dancing with old ladies, and they were doing the moves, and it was so much fun. I mean, it's just so simple and relaxed and lovely, you know?
That's great.
It really, really is.
Well, good. Well, I hope we all get there. In the meantime, don't forget to go to Acapella and buy Annette's book, Elias, My Boyfriend, and learn more about it and dream more about going there. And thanks, Annette. It's been fun to see you again.
It's been so fun to see you, and thank you for doing this.
Yes, and thanks to the History Center.
And yes, thank you to the History Center.
Always love the History Center.
I love the History Center. I was so excited to actually go there in my car and see everybody, but you know, unfortunately that's not the way it worked out, but oh well. But thank you to the History Center. They've been lovely, and thank you to everybody that joined, and come visit us at La Fortessa in probably 2021 would be my guess. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, and everybody should stay well, and you should stay well too.
Yeah, y'all too. Stay safe, everybody.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, Betsy. Ciao, everybody. Ciao, ciao. Ciao, ciao.